just you get to choose. Right? Like here's the scenario. The environment gives us something which can be perceived as negative, can be perceived as not working, can be perceived as problematic. The world's ending. But we get to choose to see it like that, or we get to choose to see it as an opportunity.
So clearly that it's my responsibility now to do that for other people. If I have information and other people's success is my success, and vice versa.
Because you know what, like the challenges or the roadblocks are the journey themselves.
There's no big things. It's all little things compounding on top of each other. Pain and discomfort come from either losing something we have or not getting something we want. If your busyness is keeping you from doing what's most important, you must find a way to be okay with letting some of it go so that you can include more of the things that will help you level up more quickly. Why is this so challenging? Well, that's what we're here to discuss on a Coach's Corner edition of Truth Seekers this week. Anytime you remove something in order to level up, you are purposely creating loss. It's how you perceive that loss that can speed up the process of growth. Remember, losing something we have, not getting something we want. If our automatic reaction is to be fearful, anytime these two things are possible, we must overcome them. Nick and I navigate some of these techniques during today's conversation. Enjoy. Welcome everybody to another episode of Truth Seekers. Coach Nick Davies joining me for an episode of Coach's Corner today. Coach, I'm always looking forward to these, getting some new insights and some new ahas and some new perspectives, coming to a place by the end of our conversation, having understood much more deeply whatever concept we want to focus on today. Does that sound good to you?
Yes, Coach, always a pleasure. Like it's indulgent time and like play around, right? Because we don't know where it's going to go, and it's just let's get deeper on some of the concepts. Let's see what we can find. It's just so often it's not we're looking for this big, huge breakthrough, not this big, huge thing that's going to make like everything different in the world's changing it all at once. It's just something small. Yet that small thing does have that kind of impact of changing everything at once, because as soon as your perspective shifts, everything changes because you're literally looking at it from a different place. And that doesn't have to be a 90-degree shift. It could be a 1-degree shift, and it's still different, right? And so from that place, you get to do different things. If we get different results, and therefore your life changes. And it's easy to think about, it's just too big. What are you talking about? But that's what life is like.
Such a great distinction. I like the frame already of like, we're not trying to build and come to a greater understanding. It's almost like let's dumb it down and strip everything else away to remind us of the principle that we're forgetting or need to be reminded of.
No, that's so true. Like just go back to it, because as soon as you make a distinction, you start to go forward, and then it starts to get layered and complicated with like the reality of what's happening as you start to apply that distinction or that action, and then you start to lose the distinction in the first place, right? It's because it gets clouded. So Coach Rich often says snapping the plumb line, coming back. I remember when I was first getting into a whole bunch of Tony Robbins and just very deep in all of his content, and there's lots of it out there, just making so many distinctions, listening over and over and over again, taking one thing out and going, got to remember that, and then just having these so many things stacked, and then going out there coaching, and then coming back to it and go, completely forgot about that. Like I'm being conscious about something that was coming out, principles that I was seeing coaching, and then going back, listen to the same content, and then just listening to it and hearing something completely different in a way. It's there's just so much of that to strip back.
So great. And it's a great segue into what I'd like to talk about today, which is expansion or growth, but by way of or by means of subtraction or shedding things or cleansing things, getting rid of things that are maybe we're really, really used to, have gotten us to where we are today, but are not necessarily the things that are going to get us to where we want to go. And I think this is a very important topic. It's come up a bunch of times with my clients this week, and I think I'm kind of experiencing it myself. So I'm looking forward to being reminded about what I'm forgetting about this principle. So here's where I stand with it. With like, we know we want more. We want whatever that is: more time, more money, more freedom, more experience, more clients, like everything, right? We want more of something. and we have it in our minds that we need to add something to it to get more, which is true. Maybe we need to do something differently. But I think part of that is if I'm already working X number of hours and I don't want to work more, doesn't that mean that something else has to go? And maybe I'm not so prepared to let that go. What is that? Well, how do you make sense of that?
Yeah. Conceptually, I think about a glass that is full, like to the top with liquid, and you're like, well, that liquid is that liquid is like let's say it's a glass of wine, and that one is full of like a cab. So you've got a big like bulb cab on one side full of it, and you're like, well, I don't want a cab, like I want a Pinot Grigio, I want a nice white. So, well, in order to get white in that glass, I can't just like pour the white in, because what's going to happen is it's going to overflow. It's going to be too much, and I'm just going to get a bunch of like red and white wine together, and I'm going to have to pour like more than a cup's worth in order to get a cup's worth out. Not possible. So what do I need to do? I need to remove what's in there first. I need to take out the red first to create the space. You've got to have the space before you put something else in, right? You can't just cram it on top.
So if I may tweak the analogy a little bit, because then this is going to lead to my question. So say it's a bucket of water and we want to clean the floor. All right. So the bucket of water is filled to the top, but we got to get our soap in there. So we got to empty out some water to get the soap in. So what if I say, Coach, well, empty out the water? What are you talking about? Like, it takes water to clean the floor, doesn't it? This is a big floor. I can't afford to dump the water out.
Right. It's like, well, you can't afford not to, because without the soap in there, the floor's not going to get clean anyway. It's going to have a wet floor.
So soap's got to go in.
Yeah.
So get me over the hump of, what would hold me back, or why am I hesitant to dump out some of the water?
Well, like anytime you remove something, you create a gap, which we're talking about here, which is purposeful. But inherently, creating a gap is removing something which is creating loss. And we don't want loss, because it feels like we're losing something, we're not good enough, something's like we're becoming less of. That's inherently, I believe, the resistance we get. And that's why the combination of what we're trying to put in has to be just as clear as what we're taking out. Because you're just taking it out for taking it out's sake. It's like, that's challenging, because you take it out, you're like, well, now what? I've lost something. You create a vacuum, something's got to go in there. So the balance of not being able to, like, I got to put the soap in, but I can't put it in until I take something out. So it doesn't work to say that you need to take, because if you just say, look, you'll be able to clean the floor better if you take some water out. Now, what are you talking about? I'll have less water. But if you said, in order to clean the floor in the right way, what might you need? You need water and soap. Okay, so, well, what have you got so far? I've got full up with water. It's okay, well, what do you need to do? I need to take some water out. So you've got to have the combination of those things together, right? Like, it's right to say that you need to have less water in order to clean the floor, but you need to have the full picture, right? You need to know why. You got to have both. So just having a subtraction of something, like, it's not enough. You've got to know, well, once I've done that, what's it going to mean? What am I going to have to put in there?
Yeah, so now I'd like to transfer this into my weekly schedule, right? We've shared our schedules, our calendars with each other before, with like all color coordinated. So say I want to get more clients, or I know that I have to exert more energy, aka more reach outs or connections or whatever that may be, more referral asks. I have to figure out in my schedule where it's going to go. It's going in there no matter what. It has to go in there, but I don't want to work more than what I'm doing right now. Something has to go that I'm not prepared to let go, or that I need to get over letting go. So it could be like me time, or research time, anything else that's a time block on there that has served me up until that point, because it's on the calendar, but it has to go. Something has to go. And I think the way I make sense of it is I don't know the right answer. I don't know what to remove, but I got to remove something. So anything I do is going to give me more information with whether or not that was the right decision. And then, as we know, there's no right or wrong decisions. There's just opportunities to make more decisions. I'll make another decision in the future with whether or not to bring that back, or to subtract something else and try something else that way.
Yeah, and I think then it just becomes a case of ordering. Like, so if I'm committed to getting to my outcome of spending more time with clients that I really want to spend time with, and the time is constant, right? So then I've got to make a decision. What is it in that time that I'm willing to sacrifice, trade off to get something that's a higher value activity? And the problem becomes that when the things you're doing already, you like to do. And this is something that successful people often see, that they have to trade in things that they like doing in order to get things that they love doing. Right? It's good to great. It's like to love. When it's like, this is terrible, it's easy to stop doing it. Like it's easy for that to be something you can stop doing and create a space. And it's then you've got the layered on of like, well, what's a habit? What's a pattern? But that's it. Like in order to really break through to the exponential level of success, there's a lot of things that you could need to be willing to sacrifice or trade off to get to that next level.
Even and maybe especially when they're still good things. Like at a certain point, if we want to keep leveling up and leveling up and leveling up, we're gonna eventually level up something by leveling up by giving up something that we're good at or that we like to be doing.
Yeah,
that's an interesting concept for me. So I think this is interesting for anybody out there who keeps leveling up and wants more, because there's some identity mixed in here too, right? Like if I don't identify myself as having that more success, then I will find a way to sabotage and not give up or not like let go of something, right? I will just stack it on top. And we know that's not good, right? Doing too much or that feeling of overwhelm, even if we get our goal, we still have the feeling of like, this is too much. I'm not enjoying this. I'm getting the results, but it doesn't feel good. Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
But I think this is a huge lesson for successful people, simple secrets of the successful.
Yeah. We hit the nail on the head. Like it's the identity. We're talking about specific, what it might be, the activity, but you have to, in order to break through to that next level, you've got to say goodbye to the person that you are. And that can feel like, I mean, at its most leveraged, that could feel like there's a grieving process there. If you spent 10, 15, 20, 30 years in your business or a particular job, and it's brought you a level of success, notoriety, so it's fulfilled multiple needs, right? Certainty, uncertainty, significance, connection. Then in order to go to that next level up, you can't do that. You can't be that person anymore. You could grieve that for sure. And I believe that's a big reason why people don't go for that next thing, because they don't see that it's enough pleasure to bring them the pain in the moment of saying goodbye to that last version of themselves, right? That's, or said differently, that's why most people sell.
I'm thinking of looking at a picture of myself 5 years ago, 7 years ago. It's like, who the heck is that person? Right? That must mean I'm doing something right. Like if I don't know myself, if I would have shocked myself by meeting that version of myself in the past, I think that's a good thing, right? Because I've let go of enough of myself where I wouldn't even recognize myself as I exist today. And to think about what that version of me is in the future is like, just boggles the mind. It's like, there's more. Of course there is, right? There's always more, but it's like, what could it be? That's the exciting part. And then, yeah, that scary part is that like, hey, I'm gonna have to keep doing this. Like you said, that was the biggest thing that struck for me. It was like, it's easy when you're unhappy to give up those things because you know that you don't want them inherently. If you want to get even more stuff, more whatever that means for you, you have to continually say goodbye to things that have served you and are good for you, but you got to get to the next level to greatness.
It's an interesting place to play, right? And the cool part about it is that, yeah, you can go back and look at that person, the version of you 7 years ago, and you can probably pull out a whole host of things that person wouldn't believe, or that person thought was dreams for the person that you are now, and then some things that they didn't even think of at all. And part of that journey is intentional, but part of it hasn't been intentional, especially stuff that person at that point couldn't even recognize. So it's like, well, think about that amount of growth of that amount of time. What if you were intentional about it again? So 7 years time, you've got proof already that you can transform yourself into something that you didn't, that was just a dream at one point. So why not get specific on the dream and the thing that you really want and put it out there, and then define it, get the plan, because you've already got proof that it works, because it's going to happen. There's going to be another 7 years past, and there's going to be a transformation. You're going to go somewhere. So why not make sure that you want the somewhere you're going is where you want to go, at least for now. I mean, I think about us being able to predict the future, right? If you're going to walk 100 steps in a single direction, and you know how wide your steps are, and you know the speed of the frequency, it's the same thing, frequency and speed, frequency, then you can predict with some certainty where and when you're going to be physically. And when we're setting out identities and goals for where we want to go, it's the same thing. The only difference is whether we actually define where it is we want to go. Chances of us ending up there otherwise are pretty slim.
It's so true. And then I think of we have to become that person. It's a gradual progress or process to become that person, the next version of ourselves. We can't make jumps in frequency. You can't go from, unless you got a Tesla, you can't go from 0 miles an hour to 20 in a dead sprint in a second, right? There's other miles per hour that you have to hit on the way up. Well, even the Tesla has to do that too, right? And you can't just go, you can't defy the laws of physics here. So you have to become gradually that version of yourself, and it's just this gradual progression. But the way you do that is how we're talking here. It's all the things that we have to do to level up. And my takeaway today, let's jump into some takeaways, is that it's really resonating with me that I have to say goodbye to some of the good things to get to this level of greatness. And it's a belief system, right? That I want to keep hanging on to those things because I know what's coming. I can see that version of myself in the future. I can see maybe not 7 years, but 5, 2. I can see that person. But you can stack on the rest to think about what it could be 7, 10, 15 years from now. And in order to do that, the version of that person in the future is going to look back on this person and be like, you got a lot to give up.
Right. Some things you downright like to do, some things serve you well. There's a balance, right? It's like anticipation so powerful. And you mentioned decision making before. It's no right or wrong. It's just options to make more decisions in the future. I think to quote Tony Robbins, maturity is knowing the consequences of your decisions before you make them. So you can actually spin things forward, and you can say, like, what's the logical path of this? If I know that there's certain things that I like to do now, but I'm maxed out on time, so I either don't do the thing that I can see that's next, or I don't do, or I sacrifice the thing that I like doing. And then you can say, well, what's the logical fast forward version of going through that? If I follow the path of the thing that I see is next, where's that going to take me? If I don't, and I continue to do what I'm doing with the other thing, where's that going to take me? And you can do it with some certainty, right? Like, you can be real about it, right? There's other things or other factors to come up we don't know about, but you could say, like, this is what I know right now, and I can only make decisions based on what I know. If I spin it forward X amount of months or years, this is where I'm going to be. This is the chance of where I'm going to be. I think that's a powerful thing to use.
I also like the tactic of working backwards. Like, if I were to meet the version of myself 2 years from now, what's that person's calendar look like? What don't they have on there? What can't they have on there for that ideal calendar that they want 2 years from now, or that they have 2 years from now?
Right. And everything, people say, like, I need to do my best. Like, what does that mean? Right? And if you were to define it, it's like doing your best is time bound and situation bound. It's in a vacuum. And so if you think about sacrifice now, so sacrifice this for next, you're thinking about now forward. And to your point, coach, you want to go from there backwards. But so if you zoom out enough and the time frame's big enough, and that a big enough time frame could be 10 years, could be 5 years, could be 6 months, could be 2 weeks. It's evolutions along the way, right? So something to sacrifice now that you like to do, it may be worth doing because the next version of you is required to get to the next version of you, which allows you to do that first thing all day long. Right? It's like if you can see that picture, to your point, see the end picture, then you can see that what's necessary now.
Bingo. Are we counting that as your takeaway, or was that a level on top of my takeaway?
No, my takeaway is what you said about the steps, and the Tesla still has to, like, you stopped and thought about it because you went Tesla, unless you're in a Tesla going 0 to 20 like instantly, you're like, well, no, even Tesla's got to go through the numbers. And so I just thought, like, when people were moving quickly, businesses are expanding, people were like overnight successes, which we know is a fallacy anyway, but it's just a perception that they're skipping steps. But what's happening is they're just moving through them quicker. And so the steps always exist, whatever that given area of your life is. But the speed at which you move through them can create a perception that you're magic, or you're doing something that's not there. But you still got to put one foot in front of the other.
It makes it so real. It makes it sound doable and achievable, because it is. But yeah, a lot of times we don't see that process for people who we deem to be successful, or that we look up to. But they did it the same way. They put their pants on one leg at a time.
Definitely a good place to end.
Yes, Coach. Always a pleasure. Thank you for joining on this week's Coach's Corner. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for watching another episode of Truth Seekers. We appreciate your interaction. So please comment, like, subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more, check out some of our links. Links to our masterclass, The Achiever's Mindset, and come join our LinkedIn group. And what do you want to see more of? Remember, we're here to share the simple secrets of successful. So help us do that. What do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? Thanks, and see you again next time.